demonstration, we're going to be using Illustrator to output color separations that can be used to print on transparencies to develop screens for screen printing. The important thing to start off with when setting your artboard size is to be aware of what print drivers you have installed on your computer. My artboard is 11 by 17. When I go into my File Print dialog box, you'll see the different print drivers that I have installed. These different printers have different printing capabilities. My small desktop inkjet and my Brother laser printer both can only go up to 11 or 8.5 by 11. So if I select one of these, notice that my artwork gets cropped and I have no option under media size to go any larger. Therefore, if I only have a driver that can go up to 8.5 by 11, my artwork can only go up to 8.5 by 11. I happen to have this Konica Minolta copier driver installed on my computer, and so I can go all the way up to 12 by 18. So my 11 by 17 artboard is not a problem. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to hit done. Okay, so now I know that I can output 11 by 17 artwork. Now I'm going to take a look at what I have here. I've already made a few different layers just to keep my artwork organized. This is not required, but it is helpful. Right at the top I have my artwork layer, and then I also have an underbase layer, which we'll use later, and then also a fabric layer. My fabric layer contains this box that just has a basic color that matches the color of the fabric that I plan to print on. I could just as easily have an image of a t-shirt blown up in the background here so I can actually see what my artwork looks like on a t-shirt. But that is down here on the fabric layer. So I'm going to go ahead and lock that. And then my artwork is set here on the top layer. Now, I haven't chosen any colors for my artwork because I want to show you how that works. The most important thing to keep in mind when outputting color separations is that any color that I want to output has to be a spot color. If I use a color build like RGB or CMYK, I cannot output a color separation because the colors are being generated by mixing multiple colors. We want individual colors selected for each item, and so I'm going to do that in one of two ways. I can either select a color from the Pantone solid coated book down here that I've already opened. I've already added a couple of them here, the Pantone 806 and this Process Blue, or I can create custom colors and set them to be spot. I'll show you how to do that. If I go over here to my Swatches palette and hit New Swatch, I create a swatch that by default is a process color, and it uses CMYK. I'm going to go ahead and adjust my color values until I get the color that I want. And as long as I change my color type to spot, I can use this in my screen print. Notice in the Swatches palette that this color has a square with a circle inside of it, just like my Pantone swatches do. If you are looking at this in swatches mode, you'll notice a little triangle with a dot, just like these down here in Pantone solid coated. That triangle with the dot is what you're looking for to know that this is designated as a spot color. I can always double click on it and double check color type, spot color. Yep, that's good. Okay. So I'm going to make sure that all of my artwork is set to be filled with a spot color. So I'm going to use Pantone 806 on my type, and my star here, I'm going to use this Pantone Process Blue, and that is now a spot color as well. Okay, so now I have my artwork done, and all of my artwork is set to spot colors. There's one way that I can check to see how this will output already. I can go up here into my Separations Previews window, which you may need to get by going to Window Separations Preview. I already have the palette open. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Overprint Preview. And what that's going to do is start showing me how all of my colors will output. Got rid of that gray background around my artboard. And right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and hide my CMYK. What that will do is get rid of my fabric colors because my fabric color was using a CMYK color build. Now all I'm left with, as far as what's visible, is my two Pantone colors, my pink and my blue. I can turn those on and off. So if I hide the pink, you'll notice that the pink disappears. What's important to note is that the pink is knocking through the blue automatically in this preview because it's showing us an overprint preview. If I hide the blue, it will just disappear and will be shown what will be printed out on the pink layer. So this just gives me a nice preview of what will print. Now, let's say you're in a case where you don't want the ink to knock through your object. There's another palette called the Attributes palette that shows up for each object, and I can select an object like this type, and I can select Overprint Fill. And what that means is that any objects that would be knocked out from behind my top object will not be knocked out, and I can see what it looks like as an overprint. You may have artwork where you want this effect, so in that case you want to set your object to have an overprint fill, but in most cases you don't want your colors to overlap like that, so you want to make sure that your overprint fill is turned off. Okay, I'm going to turn off overprint preview, and now I'm back to my artwork. And the last step that I need to take before I output this is to create an underbase. If I just print this on a gray t-shirt, my blue and my pink are going to get really muddy. That pink and blue will not be vibrant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to print a third color, and that color is going to be a white underbase. So I'm going to take my artwork, select it, Command C, and I'm going to hide my artwork, and I'm going to select my underbase, and I'm going to do Command F to paste my artwork on the underbase layer. So now this is a copy. If I hide the underbase, you see my artwork still there. So now I have a copy of all of my artwork. First thing I'm going to do is select it all, and I'm going to merge those pieces together using the Pathfinder tool. So using the Pathfinder tool, I'm just going to either use the merge or unite tool to unite all of my objects, and notice I have all of my objects now are merged together into one shape. This is going to be my white underbase. Now it's important to keep in mind that when you screen print, you don't want to have two objects overlapping each other that have to be lined up perfectly, because they never will. What I don't want is to have a little bit of white sticking out behind my star. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of trapping to this underbase. I want to shrink it in just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to fill it with a new spot color that will be designated as my white. It doesn't matter whether it's white or not, it just has to be a spot color. So I'm going to pick a color that we haven't used before, and we're just going to do this really wonderful green color here. And to add my trapping, I'm going to I can go to Object, Path, Offset Path, and I can negatively shrink my stroke and create a smaller shape. But there's a fun little trick that we can do where we add a stroke, and as long as that stroke is CMYK, like I can use, I'm going to go ahead and create a new swatch that's CMYK and is set to process color. I'm going to do a crazy color just so you can see it. So now I have a stroke set to this non-spot color. I'm going to zoom in so you can see. So I have this stroke. Notice that the stroke is partially overlapping my underbase object. Because I have that set to a CMYK and not spot, where the stroke overlaps my spot color underbase, it will not print. So I've actually already created some nice trapping. I'm going to turn on my artwork, and it doesn't matter that this stroke is hanging out. That will not print when I export. So this is ready to print now, because I have my artwork set to spot colors, so those are right here, and I have my underbase set to another spot color. The fill is set to this Pantone 382, and the stroke is set to a CMYK color. All right, now it's time to output. I'm going to go to File, and I'm actually going to print these color separations. So I'm going to go to File, Print, and we see again the things that I set before. But instead of actually choosing the printer that I'm using the driver for, I'm going to set my printer to Adobe PostScript file. And once I do that, I can go to Output, and you'll see here something similar that we saw in the Separations Preview palette. I can hide the process colors and show only the Pantone colors that I want to output. Now, in this step, I only want to output the colors that are used in my artwork and not export the underbase. The reason being is if I try to output the underbase, nothing will happen because my top two colors are not set to overprint fill. So the underbase is being removed because of that overprint fill setting. So I'm going to hit Save, and I'm going to save this. It's going to save it as a PostScript file, so a .ps file. This is going to be my screen print. I'm going to call this Colors, and save. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hide my artwork and do it again. So what I'm doing now is I'm revealing my underbase. I'm going to go to Output. I'm going to hide the process colors that are coming out and only output the Pantone 382, which is my underbase. Notice that while I'm doing this, my preview does not update. Don't worry about that. That's okay. I'm going to hit Save. Call this underbase. Save. Okay, now I'm going to go to my file browser, and here are my two PostScript files. Now, these look like they could be PDFs, but they're not quite yet. What we have to do is use Adobe Distiller to distill them into PDFs. You should have Adobe installed on your computer. If not, you need to install it using the Adobe Creative Cloud. And when you open it, you'll get this simple dialog box that shows default settings set to standard and this nice little window showing your distilled file list. I'm going to take both of these PostScript files, select them, and drag them into the distiller, and it's automatically going to happen. It's going to distill my job down into PDFs. Give that a moment. All right, you're going to get potentially an error that says confirm security. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to say OK again. And notice over here we have PDFs of our artwork. So my first PDF has my screen print artwork, and notice that there's nothing except the first color that we chose, and it's been changed to black. And then here's my artwork from my second color. Now, if I go to the other PDF, you'll see my underbase. And if I take these into Acrobat, just to show, get my pages, I'm going to drag this into here. Can I do that? There we go. Okay, so now I have all three pages in one. I want to show this to you so we get them nice and tight. So now when I change to my underbase, you'll notice, see how the star shrinks slightly on that underbase? That's because that stroke, which had the CMYK color value added to it, cropped in or tightened in the trapping on that underbase. So that's a little bit smaller, a little bit larger. Okay, so now I have a PDF that has all of my color separations set out, ready to print out on a transparency that I can develop onto a screen print or a screen and use to screen print my t-shirt.